This is Penn Woods interviewing for the Oklahoma Living Legends. This is July the 6th, 1975. We're in Mustang, Oklahoma at the, is it the First Bank of the First Mustang State Bank. And we are beginning an oral history program, which is the bicentennial project for the city of Mustang, one of its principal bicentennial projects. The person that we will be interviewing today, having as our witnesses a number of the people who are going to be participating in Mustang's oral history program. Our interviewee is Mr. Don Young. That's D-O-N-Y-O-U-N-G. Mr. Young lives at Route 2, Box 26 in Mustang. That's a box number. He's a farmer. He farms in this area, and we'll ask him exactly where he is farming. But Don, I wonder if you would tell us where you were born, I know here, but if you will tell us who your father and mother were and how they happened to come to the Oklahoma Territory.
My grandfather lived in Harper, Kansas, and they came down in '89, settled near Noble on a farm down there, and later protested the homesteading of the farm a mile and a half north of Mustang. To the fact that some land company had more than 1/4 settled, and they protested it and let the one down at Noble go back and homesteaded the one a mile and a half north of Mustang. My mother was born in South Dakota, and her father moved from South Dakota to Chattanooga, Tennessee in covered wagon, and her mother died in childbirth in Tennessee, and they left the child with some people in Tennessee to take care of until they got settled, and they went back, and they said that the child later went back and they said the child had passed away. So they don't know yet for sure what happened to one of the children. And they settled right a mile straight west of Camp Kickapoo, what they called I think it was Siloam Springs or something. I can't remember the exact name of the springs. She went to school at the old Red Hill School, not the Red Hill Schoolhouse, the old Coon Ridge Schoolhouse, which is 2 miles east and a mile south of 89th Mustang Road. My father came to Oklahoma. They came down through El Reno, an old wagon trail about a 1/4 mile south of the water tower on south of Yukon. And they said at that time that the grass was high as the wagon box was on the wagon. And when they came to the present homestead, said there's 5 trees on that place. It was all the trees there was along the creek. And there's, I think all the original trees are now gone. The last one fell about 3 or 4 years ago.
Your father's first name was?
Charles Samuel Young.
And your mother's maiden name?
Alice Johanna Jensen.
I know that your father and mother over the years have probably told you some of their experiences. Thinking sort of chronologically, do you recall, your father was 12 years old, I believe, when he made the run, so he would probably remember some. Did he describe to you in any way the making of the run to the Noble area?
No, not to my recollection.
You recall any of the early stories that he told you of either the Noble area or of your early days of the farm here?
Well, he told me approximately where it was. It's right south of Noble, but I never was at the location. And that they lived in a half dugout for I think about 2 years while they was building the house. They had to show so much improvement on the property before the land would be granted to them. And I think it was 1892 when they got the original land grant signed by Theodore Roosevelt, which he, in 1951, when we bought the farm, he gave that to us and told us we could keep it to show to our grandkids. And so we have the original land grant for their property at home.
Do you recall any of his experiences that he may have told you about in on the homestead?
Not any particular experience that I can.
How about your mother? Did she have any? She was a little younger, but did she have any early experiences that she discussed?
No, they just had a pretty hard time of it. That's I had 7 brothers and sisters, and that was a pretty rough go. And
You were the youngest of the
I
group.
was the youngest of 8 children.
Of course, you were born in 1928, is that or 29?
That's right, 28.
In 28. The oldest brother was quite a bit older, wasn't he? How old was he?
My oldest brother was 20 years older than I am, and he makes him about 46. I mean 66.
66. He's living.
Yes, he lives at Ardmore, and one brother passed away 2 years ago, and the rest of them, brothers and sisters, live in Oklahoma City.
Do you recall any of the early experiences that your brothers may have recalled about the homestead?
No,
Now you went to.
Go ahead.
You're the only one on the homestead now in that area now.
Yes, I'm the only farmer of the bunch. The rest of them are all in the tile business.
You have 4. You have the equivalent of 4 homesteads now, don't you?
I'm operating the equivalent of 4 homesteads.
Are you operating them all yourself, or are you leasing them part?
No, I'm operating them.
Operating them. Could you describe Mustang as you remembered it when you were growing up and in school here?
Well, you can drive right down Mustang Road and see it all on each side of the road. It just all there was here. We used to farm this place where this building is sitting when I was. Well, then we farmed it in about 45. We had feed planted all up through where the shopping center is and all on this quarter. But Mustang was just the original old part of town. There was the hardware building was there, and one of the saloons on the south end of town where they had a garage in it. And let's see, there's a grocery store on the west side of the street, and which used to be the really a general store. They had dry goods and groceries and everything in it. The post office and telephone company.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at Mustang in the old red brick building.
Why don't you describe the building itself and some of your early teachers?
Well, the building was just a square brick building. It had 12 grades in it. I don't remember exactly, about 12 rooms too, I guess. No, it didn't have 12 rooms. It just had about 8 rooms in it, and they had 2 classes to a room. And now I'll tell about the teachers now. Back then I didn't think they was too good, but now I think they were wonderful people to put up with. Kids haven't changed too much in years. I've done probably the same things that other kids have done, maybe a little more. And on Halloween nights, I was on the auxiliary police, and I told the chief, I said, well, you don't want me. I've turned over more outhouses and walked more miles in this town than any of the kids there are in here. And he said, well, you're just the one I want, because you know what's going to happen. But it's, the teachers were real fine. I've had some I didn't get along with, but I can't say it was 100% teacher's fault. because maybe I didn't try too hard myself, which I can count back now and see that I didn't.
Try to recall some of the more memorable teachers that you remember in the...
Well, I can't think of her name. My first grade teacher, I can't remember, Drawback, I believe was her name. I don't have any idea where any of my teachers are now to amount to anything. But, see, John Reynolds was superintendent when I started the school, and I was scared to death of him, and he was the most gentle man you ever saw, but I was still scared of him. And then Earl Drennan was superintendent for about, I can't remember, about 6 or 8 years. And then to me, the most wonderful superintendent Mustang ever had or ever will have is Ernest Elliott. I was one of those boys, I got smarter than the teachers, and I didn't get along with one teacher. I liked 6 months of graduating, so I decided I was going to quit school. Well, I quit school for about 6 weeks, and Mr. Elliott came out to the house one day, and he sat down there and talked to me for about 2 hours. He said, I think if you come back, we can do so-and-so. So next morning I went back to school, and he did it. So they turned me out, so I'd give him my diploma. So I made it through 12 grades on account of him. And Ms. Elliott was the best math teacher that you could have. She knew her math, she knew how to teach it.
What are some of the punishments that you recall?
Well, they had a little board, the main punishment we had. That was probably the most effective. Now, we had to stay in a recess, but that didn't hurt too bad. We could kind of get over that. But that little long board, about so long, it was more effective than the rest of them.
Who could swing that board the best?
I imagine, I can't think of his name now. The one that swung it the best on me was McNeely. I don't remember his first name. Carroll, no. I can't. Was it Carroll? That was, he lived there. It wasn't him. He didn't live here.
What were some of the activities that you had in your school?
We had baseball, basketball, horseshoes. I played baseball every chance I got, and we played basketball. Played basketball for 3 years in high school, and we got pretty solidly on horseshoes. We pitched horseshoes morning before school, and noon, and after school, and every chance we got.
What did you do competitively against other schools? What sports?
Basketball and baseball was about all we had then.
Where'd you play? Who'd you play against?
Union City, Yukon, Piedmont, El Reno, no, not El Reno, Calumet, Anadarko, and Concho. No, Calumet and Concho.
Can you describe farming before World War II, during the earlier days?
Well, whenever I was growing up, I started driving a team of mules or a team of horses when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And then when I was 10, 12, 14, well, I was in the field every day with my dad, either plowing or driving a team on the cultivator or something. And then we farmed with horses up until, I think it was 1943, we got our first tractor, and we thought, man, we was really going to town. Had a 2-bottom tractor with lug wheels. It was really something after horses. Well, then we put rubber tires on it, and it was a whole lot better. Seemed like the longer we drove it, the slower it got, so bought a 4-bottom tractor. Now, boy, man, we're really going now. We got plow 4 plows at a time. The longer I drove it, the slower it got. So now we moved up to 5 and 6-bottom tractor. So I don't know what it'll be in the next 20 years. They've already got tractors full 10 bottoms, but I don't have one.
What was the size of Mustang when you came here?
Population is 107. It's on the highway sign. I don't know whether that count. I'd probably count the dogs and cats too, but it wasn't very big. It just, I don't remember how many houses there was, but there wasn't. Probably 50 houses would probably cover the whole town.
With 170 people, how many would you have had in school?
There's 107 people.
Yeah, 107.
Well, I can't tell you exactly how many there was in school. I know how many graduated in my class was 12. 9 girls and 3 boys. We was kind of outnumbered. But you girls know these girls can't get along, so part of them side over with us, and we had it going.
And of course, that was quite a few years later. Then the population was considerably higher than 107 at
Yes,
that time.
the town had grown considerable by then, but it hadn't. The old part of town hadn't done much growing then. It was little east side of Mustang was growing.
What did you do after you graduated from high school?
Well, I farmed with my father and drove a milk truck for 10 years. And was still farming. In 1951, we bought the farm. They moved town in 51, and we started farming and bought the farm in 61.
Discuss the milk truck. How did you, were you wholesaling it or were you delivering?
No, I was picking up at the farms and canned milk, 10-gallon cans. Picked it up out of water tanks, and then some of them had coolers. And pick it up in 10-gallon cans and throw it on a truck and run it down right quick before it got hot.
Did you deliver to a dairy?
Yes, we delivered to Medigold, Borden's, and Steffens, and Townley's, and Atleys.
Did you apparently didn't have a contract with any particular one. Did you just depend upon where the price was the best, or how did you determine where?
No, we didn't do anything with the milk. We just picked it up. The farmer had it sold. All we did was delivered it.
Well, after you graduated from high school, you continued farming. Were you in the World War II?
No.
You were not.
Had 2 brothers in, but I was the youngest one of the bunch, and I was home. My dad was crippled from the time I was 14, 15 years old, where he couldn't do the farming with arthritis, and I've been doing most of the farming since I was junior in high school.
During this period following the war, what are some of the outside activities, civic or otherwise, that you were involved in?
During the war?
No, following the war.
Following the war? Oh, I belonged to the Mustang Methodist Church and belonged to Wesley Lodge, number 407, the Chief Chapter of the Eastern Star 512, and member of the first police department Mustang had, Mustang Auxiliary Police.
Can you discuss their organization of the police force and how it operated?
They had a retired medical discharged officer out of Oklahoma City, Roy Gruball, came to Mustang and organized the police department, and after he got in here, he knew he was going to have some help, so he called for some volunteers, and there's like 7 of us volunteered. We rode the car 4 to 5 hours a night for a week, every 7 weeks, and this was all donated hours, and uniforms and equipment was all donated. It was no expense whatsoever to the town of Mustang. It was all on the individuals. And I think they had a pretty good coverage, the town did at that time. In 5 minutes, they could have 7 vehicles out in case of emergency.
That was your first police. What brought about the feeling that you needed to form a police force?
Well, really, I didn't have anything to do with the forming of the police force itself. I just volunteered after they hired the police chief.
I presume the growth, though, had some effect on it.
Yes, growth of the town, and they had to have some law enforcement service of some kind because it was getting too much for the county to maintain the whole thing. And then I was acting police chief for 6 weeks after the police chief quit. Gruball quit on account of health reasons, and Charles Gooch took over, and then he quit, and Mustang was without any law enforcement for 6 weeks.
Did you have, you were without law enforcement for 6 weeks?
I worked for 6 weeks for the town while they was without a police chief.
The, could you describe the growth of Mustang following World War II? That's when it began to really spread out, wasn't it?
Yes, started out on the east side. They started building houses over along there, and then they bought what's now the Meadows and this area right here, and just started growing in that, and Lake Homa started growing, and it just kept mushrooming till it's, I don't know what the population is right now, but it's growing pretty fast.
The Mustang school today is a rather wealthy school.
Yes, whenever I was going to school, if they pulled out the nails that belonged to Ernest Elliott, the whole building would fall down. The state had condemned it for several years because it wasn't safe, but they didn't have any place else to go, so they let them go in and have school in it. And then Mustang Valley was sitting over there with a lot of money, and Yukon decided they wanted them, and Mr. Elliott told the board to leave them alone, that if they'd leave them alone and not agitate them, well, they'd get them. So Yukon made up their mind that they was going to take them over at a certain time, so Mustang Valley annexed to Mustang. And that's how they got the OG&E plan in Mustang School District.
That has made a difference in the wealth of the school.
It sure has. They couldn't even pay their light bill up here with the money that they operated the school, teacher salary and all, before.
The one of the recent Mustang school superintendents after you were out was Dr. Charles Hollyman. Did you know him?
Yes, I knew him pretty well.
What was he, about 5 or 6 years?
Well, Mr. Astle came in after him, Elliott, Guy Astle, and he was here, I don't know exactly how many years he was here, and then Charlie Holloman was superintendent for 4, 5, 6 years, and then I can't even think of his name. Bill Riley, superintendent now.
Hollyman was well known as a speaker, and I believe resigned from here to run for state superintendent. Isn't that right?
Yes, he went for state superintendent. Now he's down at Muskogee.
President of Bacone.
President of
Bacone College.
Yes.
Can you think of any people from Mustang who have obtained prominence either statewide or in an area-wide or within a particular profession?
Well, you've gotten me. I can't think of any right offhand. I think the Stansbury is, I can't think what he is. Harold Stanton? No, not Harold. Fuzzy, what they called him. Is that Harold? Okay, Harold. I didn't know him by that name. His state, he's president of something in Oklahoma City.
Well, he's not
president of a bank in Oklahoma City.
I think he's vice president of the Guarantee Bank, I believe, but he was the executive director of the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce for quite a number of years.
Yes.
He's from Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
Now you served in the Wesley Lodge. Is that a Methodist lodge?
No, it's Masonic Lodge.
Masonic Lodge.
Yes, I served, held about all the offices, and past master in 50, no, I don't know what, 57, 58, I don't remember now.
Can you tell a little about the Masonic Lodge here?
Well, it's growing pretty good. I don't know exactly how many members they have now. They built a new building and added on to the back of it and had a recreation and meeting room.
You were one of the organizers of the Boy Scout was that the first Boy Scout troop here in 1960?
Yeah, it was the first one, but I don't remember what year it was.
Being so close to Kickapoo, it's surprising you all didn't have a scout troop.
Well, I think they had one years ago. I'm not really sure before that, but it all fell apart, and I think Chester Spittler was a scoutmaster of really the first one, and then we reorganized. And I haven't been active in it in several years now. My boy got too big for Boy Scouts.
Your first scout troop here was sponsored by what organization?
The Mustang Methodist Church? No, Masons. Wesley Lodge.
Wesley Lodge. You're married, is that correct?
Right. Very much so.
Is that right? What's your wife's name?
Doris was married on August 24th and 48.
Is she from Mustang?
Well, this area. She was born in Minco and moved over to Will Rogers Field and when she was in the 5th grade, and she lived over there till 1948.
I wonder if some of the some in this room now can help me with some questions. Those are questions we ought to ask Don. You all know him better than I do. What were some of the major events that have taken place in Mustang during the years that you recall?
The main event I can think of was on Memorial Day. They always had a truck fixed up. I know Dad brought his truck up a few times, and they'd have a big float and have it all fixed up, and they'd sit on the back of that truck and haul the choir up to the cemetery, and they'd sing songs at the cemetery on Armistice Day, Memorial Day. And that one stuck in my mind more than anything else in this town. It was really pretty, the way they had it dialed up. Of course, we didn't see too much of that around Mustang.
How was 4th of July celebrated as you were growing up?
Well, we more or less celebrated our 4th of July right at home, really. As far as the town, I don't think they did too much 4th of July celebrating.
I think you've told me how Halloween was celebrated, hadn't you?
Yes, sir. It's been celebrated pretty strong all the way through.
Anybody ever in the outhouses?
Yes, ma'am. They've been in the outhouses with a shotgun and got ready to turn over.
Only problem is there aren't many outhouses left, are there?
No, anymore. They gotta bring something out and completely destroy it and burn it up. But one night we was getting ready to turn the outhouse over and walked up behind it and had it up about a 45-degree angle, and someone started hollering, and poor old John Haymes came out with a shotgun. And he said something to us, and we said, well, you go back in the house and leave us alone. And I said,
he wasn't in that house, was he?
He was in it when we was getting ready to turn it over. And he was sitting there with a shotgun, and we told him if he'd go in the house and leave us alone, we wouldn't turn it over. So he went in the house, and we went off and left it.
You were active in the Masons. You were active in the Methodist Church. Have any other organization you've been active in?
We we belonged to the Eastern Star at Wheatland, and my wife and I both belonged to that, and we've served offices in it through these twice. And I was acting postmaster of Mustang for 2.5 years.
Tell about that experience.
Well, it was a real nice experience in the wintertime when it's cold and the wind blowing and everything. He's in there where it's warm, but when the grass come out in the spring, you kind of felt like you was in jail. You couldn't get out, but it was a small operation compared to what it is now. I think it was, I forgot how many boxes there were on the route now, about 140 or 50 boxes on the route, and about 70, 80 boxes in town.
What year were you acting postmaster? What years?
57 and 58, I guess it was. 57 to 59.
When was the period of principal growth of Mustang?
I don't know, I'd say somewhere around 65 to 70 was
What do you attribute it to more than anything?
transportation and to Oklahoma City, and really the school has had a lot to do with the growth of Mustang, but better transportation, jobs in the Oklahoma City area were FAA and Western Electric and all the jobs on the west side of Oklahoma City.
Ms. Young, at this point, what would you ask him? Could you describe your dairy operation today as compared with the early dairy operation?
Well, whenever I was home, we just tied the old cow up in the barn and just sat down with a bucket and started milking. And we milked, I think 21 is the most we ever milked. And I know one time my dad had to go to Claremore for hot baths for his arthritis, and my mother got blood poison in her hand and couldn't milk, and I was the only one there, and my nephew was 2 years younger than I am, and he had never milked a cow, so he came out and we milked 21 cows, but I milked 7, I think it was 15 while he was milking 6, but that's a lot of cows by hand when you aren't used to it, and I think I was probably 14 then.
Why don't you describe the transition of the dairy from what it was then to now?
Well, you went from the old barn that you tie the cow up with a chain and sit down and milk her, and then we went to a milk barn, a concrete floor and stanchions, and we milked them in there for several years. I think we started in there in 41. Milked them in there for several years, and then we went to a milking machine with a gasoline engine. I think it was 1943 before REA got any electricity into us, and we milked with a gasoline engine, and we got electric motor and put on it for milkers, and then I think in 65, I believe it was, we built what you call a milking parlor, where the cow is elevated up about 30 inches on the floor, and you walk down the pit where you don't have to bend over and get in between them, and the milk is piped on into the milk house in stainless steel pipe, and the tank, it goes into a big tank which is refrigerated.
Were you delivering milk from door to door in the early days?
No, we never did. We at one time my folks did milk and separate and churn butter and deliver butter and eggs in Oklahoma City on Saturday.
What about the farm to market wagons? Was Mustang a center for farm to market wagons coming in on weekends?
I don't know whether they had the farm to market wagons. At one time they had a stockyards up by the railroad track, and they had a peach cannery, which would have been a marketplace for the orchards in the area. But we went to Oklahoma City. I know my dad used to go to Oklahoma City twice a week with a team of mules and wagon and haul buttermilk back for hogs.
I was thinking particularly of the truck farmers who would bring in the fruits and the vegetables and such and sell them off the wagons. Do you recall that?
No, I don't know as they did in the Mustang area. I've seen a few watermelons and things around, but not. By the time I was old enough to remember, the peach orchards and apple orchards were all about gone.
Did many come from here? Did many of the farmers go from here to Oklahoma City with the wagons to sell on the street?
Yes, they used to go to the public market, which is in Reno and Klein, and sit down there all day long with a load of melons and cantaloupes and peaches and what have you, and try to sell them out down there.
Well, do we think of anything else to ask Mr. Young?
How about the family customs of family get-togethers when you were growing up?
Family get-togethers when you were growing up.
Well, we had a family get-together about every Sunday, and seemed like even though we didn't get as much done during the week with horses and whatnot, we always had more time to visit with our neighbors than we do now. Anymore, it just seemed like all we do is work, and we don't hardly know our next door neighbors.
Anything else?
Well, when he was doing that dairy bit, he could have gone into a little detail on cooling the milk, you know, the original cooling, and then as it advanced along, but he skipped that, so I guess there's no point in
No,
that.
there's no reason not to. Why don't we can skip right back into it. Could you tell us a little about cooling of the milk in the earlier days and how these concepts change, and also while you're doing that, the move from the old raw milk, which you all started off with, I'm sure everyone else did, to the pasteurized and finally to the homogenized?
Well, originally they cooled the milk by either putting it in a horse tank or putting it in a barrel and pumping water in the barrel around it, and try to keep them sour, and that's about all they did. They didn't try to keep the bacteria from growing, just trying to keep them souring. And then they went from that into enclosed tanks that more or less insulated and maybe put a little ice in it, and then they went from that to can coolers that had a refrigeration unit with coils down in the water and cool it that way, and then they went to the bulk tank, which is got refrigeration coils right in it, and the milk is directly into the tank.
Yep. It's been an interview with Don Young of Mustang on July the 5th, 1975. The interview was Penn Woods.
We lost it there.
July 6th. Pardon me.